Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military with Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in the world on the 26th of July of 2026. Today we have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first let's talk about the conflict on the territory of Ukraine, where during the previous 24 hours the Russians have improved their positions significantly. And first let's talk about these improvements and changes on the ground. According to information we have, according to the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, the Russians captured the settlement of Shevchenko on the way towards the city of Dobropillia. And these are the changes on the ground between the dates. This is the end of the 25th of July, and this is already the end of the 26th of July of 2026. So now it's clear that the Dobropillia direction is the most important direction for Russians during the late summer military campaign, and this is exactly what the Russians would try to achieve before the beginning of the battle for the cities of Slaviansk, Kramatorsk, and Drapatiy. Many experts believed and supposed that first the Russians would attack these territories and only then the Russians would continue their offensive operation in the direction of Dobropillia, but now it's clear that the Russians decided first to take these territories under complete control, and we understand why. The thing is that since the beginning of the special military operation, every time when the Russians were fighting for this or that big city, it was always a city behind. For example, when the Russians were fighting for the city of Bakhmut, the Ukrainians had the city of Chasiv Yar, and the Ukrainians used the city of Chasiv Yar to support their contingent and to support the battle for the city of Bakhmut. When the Ukrainians lost control over the city of Bakhmut and the Russians began attacking the city of Chasiv Yar, the Ukrainians were supporting the contingent on the city from the city of Konstantinovka. And the same story took place during the battle for the city of Toretsk. When the Russians were attacking the city of Toretsk, it was always the city of Konstantinovka behind. So, and this is the tactics that the Ukrainians have been using since the beginning of the special military operation. And even now, when the Russians began fighting for the city of Konstantinovka, and there are cities like Alexeyevka, Drushkovka, and Drushkovka behind. And when Russians began offensive operation towards the settlement of Alexeyevka, Drushkovka, there is a city of Drushkovka behind. So there is always a big city behind any other city where the Russians conduct their offensive operation, which allows the Ukrainians, first of all, to save the balance, to have positions for concentration and accumulation of forces, and many other different benefits. But when talking about the city of Dobropillia, there is nothing behind the city. And at the same time, the Russians have the cities like Pokrovsk, Mirnograd, and Grishina, Rodinska, Belitska behind these positions. So which means that the Ukrainians are forced to concentrate their forces through these fields. And telling the truth, the Ukrainians are not able to concentrate thousands of troops with the purpose to support their contingent on the territory of Dobropillia. Meanwhile, the Russians have possibilities to concentrate troops of the brigade or even division levels to the south of the settlement of Dobropillia. And furthermore, if Ukrainians lose control over the city of Dobropillia, they would be forced to remove and to move their main positions further in the northwestern direction, almost till the cities of Lazova and Pavlograd. So that is why the Russians decided to take these territories under complete control, and it seems that the Russians are tasked to do this very fast. Once again, these are the changes on the ground. This is the end of the 25th of July, and this is the end of the 26th of July. Furthermore, according to these updates, the Russians captured the settlement of Shevchenko, many tree lines and fortifications through these territories, and the most important is that the Russians managed to break through Ukraine's defenses to the east of the settlements of Svetla and Vadyanska, and furthermore, the Russians, as a result of clashes, captured the southern parts of the settlement by the name of Chernigovka. So we are talking about the Strait of Miro. So this territory is already under complete control of Russians. We see that the defense of the armed forces of Ukraine through this area has collapsed completely. The Russians continue advancing, and once again, as we discussed, the Russians are tasked to take these territories as fast as possible. The Russians don't have months to take this territory. They don't have time even till the end of this year. They have probably months or two with the purpose to take these territories under complete control. and the city of Dobropillia, the Russians are tasked to take before the end or the beginning of parliament elections on the territory of Russia that are going to take place during the autumn of 2026. Another important thing, just several days ago, the Russians reported that the settlement of Belitska was captured by Russians, and since that situation was announced, the Russians published dozens of videos with flags through the settlement. And for example, these are the changes starting from the 21st of July of 2026, and as you can see, during these days, just during the last decade of July, the Russians have improved their position significantly. So another important thing, the Russians are tasked to take these territories under complete control and very fast. Why very fast? Because for the first time probably since the summer of 2025, the Russians have used mechanized massive assaults with the purpose to take these territory under control. So you know that since August or since July of 2025, we haven't seen massive mechanized attacks from the Russian side. The Russians, since the end of the summer of 2025, have begun using only small sabotage and reconnaissance groups, attacking Ukraine's positions, infiltration tactics, and so on. And to date, more precisely these days, this video was published by pro-Ukrainian sources, and this video was describes the situation and the Russian massive attack on July 2022. And during this video, we can see probably dozens of Russian vehicles attacking positions of the armored forces of Ukraine. So lots of vehicles were involved. We can see tanks. I haven't seen tanks attacking Ukraine positions probably for ages, and we see this right now. So the Russians were trying to break through Ukraine's defenses, and the most important, the Russians were tasked to concentrate a critical mass very fast. So the Russians, of course, they have possibilities to continue these infiltrations with the units, with soldiers, but it takes a lot of time. The Ukrainians manage to adapt to these tactics, so they know how to fight with these tactics. So that is why the Russians decided to use mechanized assault with the purpose just to concentrate a critical mass much faster than the Ukrainians are able to do this, with the purpose to take the initiative faster than Ukrainians and then to hold this initiative until the end of the battle. So the Russians are tasked to take these territories under complete control. Once again, there are no more big cities behind the city of Dobropillia, and if this situation happens, of course, experts believe that the Russians first of all would continue offensive operation in the northeastern direction with the purpose to outflank the settlement of Kramatorsk from behind and to attack the main contingent of the armored forces of Ukraine, right exactly using these routes of attacks. And this situation could lead not just to big problems to the armed forces of Ukraine, but even to encirclement. And we are talking about encirclement of dozens of thousands of Ukrainians through the Slaviansk-Druzhkovka agglomeration. And from the other side, we see that the Russians, if they are going to use these tactics, believe that they can save the city of Slaviansk-Druzhkovka and Kramatorsk. We are talking about buildings, facilities, and territories for civilians. So the civilians would be able to return back and to continue living in this area. So this is the situation in this area. Very interesting and very difficult one, obviously. Anyway, let's wait and see how the things are going to develop. But as for the beginning of this situation, we see that the Russians began developing their offensives very fast. The Russians continue offensive, and during these days, since the beginning of the 20th of July, the Russians, as we can see, have improved their positions significantly. Now let's talk about the Konstantinovka direction. During the previous 12 hours, also additional changes on the ground were recorded. So, for example, this is the end of the 24th of July, this is the end of the 25th of July, and this is already the end of the 26th of July. The Russians improved their position through fields. The Russians, as you can see, began taking and the settlement of Alexeyevka-Druzhkovka in pincers, trying to outflank the settlement from the north and from the south. And these these changes confirm that this is exactly what the Russians are trying to do right now. So furthermore, we have reports that the Russians have already positions through the settlement itself, which means that the city of Konstantinovka is already far behind the Russia's positions and the Russian edge positions, and the Russians continue infiltration. So while the Russians fighting for Dobropillia and accelerate their offensives, we see that the Russians also try to pin down the Ukrainians between Alexeyevka, Drushkovka and Slaviansk, with the purpose not to allow the Ukrainians use strategic or tactical reserves from this area, with the purpose to stabilize the situation in this area. And the most important thing is the things that Mikhailo Drapatiy, the current commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, started doing. According to information we have, Drapatiy began a mandatory audit of the armed forces of Ukraine. Ukraine's new army chief, Mikhail Drapatiy, announced a sweeping audit of the entire armed forces just 5 days after replacing Alexander Syrsky as commander-in-chief. He said the goal is not to look for the guilty, but to honestly assess the real state of affairs, covering combat readiness, supply, manning, training, and combat effectiveness across every unit, with no untouchables and full accountability for negligence or abuse. So this is a very important situation because, as you can see, he started audit during the main battle. So during the battle between Drushkovka and Slaviansk, and of course this audit is going to be something like additional pressure on commanders of the armed forces of Ukraine through direction. And the most important thing is that the main task of this audit is not to check the readiness of the armed forces of Ukraine. Believe me, Drapatiy knows for sure the readiness of the armed forces of Ukraine, or their unreadiness, complete unreadiness or something like this. The most important goal is that the former commander-in-chief Syrsky left his position just a day or 2 days before the beginning of this major battle. The battle for the Dobropillia direction, for these territories. And Syrsky, when he was leaving his position, he told Drapatiy that the armed forces of Ukraine is probably one of the most powerful armies in the world, that this is the army that is not just in the defense state, but also this army is an offensive state, and many other different things. And now Drapatiy is trying to check this, not just because he doesn't know, he knows everything. He's trying to do this because if he fails when talking about Dobropillia, Drushkovka and Slaviansk, he will always have possibilities to blame Syrsky, that was his fault, that he gave him completely unready, unprepared army. So this is the only reason why Drapatiy started this. Of course, if he started this audit 2 or 3 months later, he would not be able to blame Syrsky, so that is why he started this audit immediately. He will receive bad results, obviously, and he will use these results to blame Syrsky, that this was his fail and his fault of collapse of the Slaviansk, the Dobropillia direction, and not his one. Anyway, let's continue and let's wait and see how the things are going to develop. Meanwhile, let's move in the northern direction, where the Russians also continue their offensive operation in the northern parts, in the northern direction of the city of Kharkiv, and the Russians continue offensive through the territory around the villages of Male, Prokhod and Liptsy. So these days the Russians attack in the southern direction through the settlement of Bielый Kolodец, Kazachya Lopань. The Russians now began advancing in the direction of Male, Prokhody, and all these things are telling us just about one thing: the Russians are trying to shorten the distances to the city of Kharkiv with the purpose to have possibilities to attack the city of Kharkiv with artillery. We're talking about not just drones, not just FABs, not just Banderol missiles, but also with artillery. If they discover another position or warehouse, the Russians want to have possibilities to attack this target immediately with just regular artillery. And if it happens, of course, this can lead to total collapse of Kharkiv defenses, first of all, and the second thing, this can lead to the situation when the Ukrainians would be forced to move their launching sites deeper inside of the territory of Ukraine. So this is also another important benefit that the Russians are trying to achieve with the buffer Kharkiv offensive operation. As for the buffer zone, the Russians continue attacking warehouses, malls, ammo depots of the armed forces of Ukraine deep inside of the territory of Ukraine for 100 and 150 kilometers, dealing significant damage. For example, during the previous night, the Russians attacked the territory of Ukraine using 144 air means, including drones and missiles. The Russians were using 7 Iskander missiles, and the sources reported that the Russians were attacking the city of Kiev. Later, the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation emphasized that the Russians destroyed at least 2 military facilities, and one of the facility was built involving the U.S. investments, and according to Russian sources, this facility had possibility to produce 1,000 of drones each month. And now the Russians are saying that they destroyed this facility. Moving in the southern direction, the Russians continue attacking the territory of Ukraine and vessels in the Black Sea. During the previous 24 hours, we received additional videos where we can see the consequences of attacks. The Ukrainians are losing their export capabilities, and now, according to information we have, the Ukrainians are trying to ask the Russians or propose them to establish something like the Black Sea ceasefire and air ceasefire. Today, several pro-Russian sources stated that there is a negotiation process between Russians and Ukrainians on the matter of airstrikes, and the Ukrainians has proposed to stop any attacks, mid-range or long-range attacks. And for example, in this video, we can see the number of drones that the Ukrainians used to attack the territory of Russia between the 25th of July, between the 18th and the 25th of July of 2026. And according to this source, the Ukrainians used 1,401 drones to attack just the territory of the Moscow region. So maybe the Russians are interested in this mid-range or long-range ceasefire, but the Russians, we need to understand, they are interested in this ceasefire just now, just today, during July, August, September, until the end of elections. But most likely the Russians are not interested in mid-range, long-range ceasefire during the winter period of time, because the Russians, as we understand, have certain plans on the winter military campaign, and the plans are very simple: total and mandatory blackout through the entire territory of Ukraine, with the purpose to destroy the defensive capabilities of Ukraine and to force the Ukrainians to capitulate, to surrender, or to start negotiations on the Russian terms. Moving further, during the previous 24 hours, lots of big malls and warehouses were destroyed by Russians. The Russians attacked the city of Kryvyi Rog, and this facility, this mall, was destroyed, and we have videos about this. In this video, we can see black smoke over this facility, but from this angle, it is very difficult to understand whether the facility was destroyed completely or not. And here we have this video where we can see that indeed the mall was destroyed, reduced to ruins without any chances to repair it. Furthermore, the Russians attacked the city of Zaporozhye. As for this territory, this post office was destroyed by Russians, and we have this video where we can see the consequences of attack, where we can see fire crews extinguish the fire, but as you can see, nothing left from the territory of this facility, and obviously it will take time while the Ukrainians are able to recover this. Furthermore, the Russians destroyed a gas station along the same street. On this video, we can see the consequences of attack. The gas station was reduced to ruins without any chances to repair it. And here we have the same gas station, but from another angle. The video has better quality. So as you can see, the Russians continue the fuel war, especially on the territory of the city of Zaporozhye, which is located very close to the line of combat contact. Now let's move further and let's talk about the Kharkiv direction. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians, seems for the first time since the beginning of the special military operation, used the Banderol missile. And in this video, we can see the use of the Russia's Banderol missile. This is not bomb. This is the Banderol missile. And as you can see, as a result of attack, this missile damaged significant damage. We see that the Russians right now prefer to use Banderol cruise missiles instead of drones or other different types of weapon. We see that the Russians accelerates the production of this type of weapon, and during the next most likely days we'll see more and more updates on this matter. Moving in the northern direction, a significant activity of Russians was recorded in this area, and probably the Ukrainians prepare launching sites before another massive attack deep inside of the territory of Russia. There are still lots of warehouses and facilities in Moscow region, so which means that in coming nights between the 26th and the 27th of July, we should expect massive attack in the direction of the capital of Russia, not just because the Ukrainians can do this or something like this. The most important thing that Zelensky is going to travel to the United States of America, where he's going to have a meeting with the President of the United States of America. And of course, before such event, we might see massive attack both from the Russian and from the Ukrainian side, because both the Russians and the Ukrainians would try to create the situation where they have better cards, stronger cards than the opponent. So that is why the Ukrainians would attack between the 26th and the 28th of July. And this attack is going to be very, very massive. The Russians are going to do the same during the same period of time before Zelensky's visit to the United States of America. But as of the current day, the Russians were trying to do everything possible with the purpose not to allow the Ukrainians to concentrate drones along the line of combat contact, with further purpose to attack deep inside of Russia. As for the Chernihiv and Sumy region, the Russians destroyed this mall in the northern parts. This evening, the Russians attacked this territory with bomb. As for the southern direction, we have for this video where we can see a fire. As a result of attack, some industrial zone was attacked and reduced to ruins by Russians. As further in the north and in the eastern direction, a gas station destroyed. In the city of Konotop, explosion was recorded. In the area of Buran, another industry facility was destroyed. So the Russians are trying to do everything possible with the purpose not to allow the Ukrainians to concentrate drones before attacking deep inside of the territory of Russia before the meeting between Zelensky and Trump. So now the Russians are tasked to do this, and this is what exactly the Russians are doing. So as you can see, the situation is quite complicated. The upcoming night between the 26th and the 27th of July, between 27th and 28th of July, are going to be very, very important, because both the Russians and the Ukrainians would try to unleash the power they managed to concentrate and to accumulate these days, and they will try to show stronger cards than the opponent. And that's it for today. The Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes to my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye-bye.